I adjusted my simple sweater and jeans as I stood on the doorstep of the Harrison family's mansion, balancing a homemade pumpkin pie in one hand. My wife Sophie squeezed my other hand reassuringly. "Remember what I said, Alex," she whispered. "Just ignore them. They don't know anything about you." If only she knew just how true that statement was. My name is Alex Chen, and to my in-laws, I was nothing more than a low-level programmer who had somehow tricked their precious daughter into marriage. What they didn't know was that their carefully orchestrated Thanksgiving dinner was about to set in motion events that would change everything. Richard Harrison, my father-in-law, opened the door with his trademark look of barely concealed disappointment. "Ah, the programmer in our Sophie. You're late." "Traffic was heavy, Dad," Sophie said, kissing his cheek. "But we brought pie." "Store-bought, I assume?" Margaret Harrison, my mother-in-law, appeared behind him, perfectly coiffed in designer wear that probably cost more than what they thought was my monthly salary. "Actually, I made it," I said quietly. "Old family recipe." Margaret's lips tightened. "How quaint. Well, come in. Everyone's waiting in the dining room. We have actual important matters to discuss." The everyone she referred to included Sophie's older brother James, the heir apparent to Harrison Technologies, and his wife Victoria, who never failed to remind people she came from old money. Also present were several board members from Harrison Technologies and their spouses. Apparently, Thanksgiving doubled as an informal business meeting these days. "Alex," James called out as we entered, his voice carrying that familiar condescending tone. "Still writing code for, what was it, some small startup?" I nodded, taking my seat beside Sophie. "Something like that." The truth was considerably different. 5 years ago I had founded Phoenix Digital, a cybersecurity company that operated entirely in the shadows, providing services to governments and major corporations under strict anonymity. Our clients knew us only by our results, and our employees were handpicked for both their skills and their discretion. The company was worth billions, but only 3 people in the world knew I was its owner. My wife wasn't one of them, not yet anyway. "Well," Richard announced, standing at the head of the table, "before we begin our meal, I have some exciting news to share. Harrison Technologies has just secured a major government contract for cybersecurity infrastructure." The table erupted in congratulatory murmurs. I took a sip of water, knowing what was coming next. "Of course," James added, smirking in my direction, "this puts us well out of reach of smaller competitors. Not that programming drones would understand the complexities of high-level business dealings." Sophie started to protest, but I gently touched her arm. "The contract they were so proud of? My company had declined it last month, knowing Harrison Technologies would grab it. Their systems were outdated, their security protocols full of holes. In about 12 hours, they would discover just how out of their depth they really were." "Speaking of business," Margaret chimed in, "Sophie, darling, isn't it time you considered coming back to the company? Surely pushing paper at that environmental nonprofit isn't fulfilling." "I love my work, Mom," Sophie replied firmly. "Making a difference matters more than making millions." "Yes, well," Margaret's eyes flicked to me, "I suppose with your choice of husband, you've had to adjust your expectations." The dinner continued in this vein, a steady stream of subtle and not-so-subtle digs wrapped in expensive wine and 5-course pretension. I ate quietly, letting their comments wash over me while mentally reviewing the events I'd set in motion. 3 months ago, when Harrison Technologies first started pursuing the government contract, I had my team do a deep audit of their systems. What we found was alarming: outdated security protocols, vulnerable networks, and worst of all, evidence of corner-cutting that bordered on criminal negligence. I could have exposed them immediately, but that would have meant revealing Phoenix Digital's capabilities. Instead, I set up a longer play. The government contract was just the first step. "Alex," Richard's voice cut through my thoughts, "James tells me your little startup is working on some kind of security software. Perhaps you could share it with our team? We're always willing to help less fortunate companies." I carefully dabbed my mouth with a napkin. "That's generous, sir, but our project is quite specialized." "Oh." James leaned forward. "Do tell. I'm sure we could make sense of it, even if it's basic." Before I could respond, Richard's phone buzzed. Then James's. Then several others around the table. The first wave of alerts was starting. Richard frowned at his screen. "James, Did you authorize a system-wide security scan? No, James replied, his own phone pinging continuously. It looks like, wait, this can't be right. I took another bite of turkey, watching as the color slowly drained from their faces. That scan they were detecting was actually the first phase of a comprehensive security audit, automatically triggered by their acceptance of the government contract. Standard procedure for all federal contractors. Something they would have known if they'd read the fine print. 372 critical vulnerabilities? James was almost shouting now. That's impossible. The government does take cybersecurity very seriously, I commented mildly. Especially for infrastructure contracts. All eyes turned to me. What would you know about it? Richard snapped. Oh, I keep up with industry standards. It's a hobby of mine. Sophie was looking between me and her family, confusion evident on her face. I'd have to tell her everything soon, but not yet. Timing was crucial. The rest of dinner was a tense affair, with Richard and James constantly checking their phones as more alerts poured in. By dessert, during which my pie was completely ignored, they had excused themselves to make emergency calls. I don't understand, Victoria said to no one in particular. Our systems were certified just last month. By your in-house team, I pointed out. Government contracts usually require independent verification. Margaret's eyes narrowed. You seem to know an awful lot about this for someone who works at a tiny startup. I shrugged, helping myself to a slice of my ignored pie. Like I said, it's a hobby. As we drove home that night, Sophie was unusually quiet. Finally she spoke. You knew that was going to happen, didn't you? The security alerts. Let's just say I had a strong suspicion, I replied carefully. Your father's company isn't as secure as they think it is. Alex, she turned to face me, what aren't you telling me? I took a deep breath. Honey, tomorrow morning a lot of things are going to change. I promise I'll explain everything, but right now I need you to trust me. She studied my face for a long moment before nodding. I do trust you. I just hope you know what you're doing. Oh, I knew exactly what I was doing. In less than 12 hours, Harrison Technologies would discover that their government contract wasn't their biggest problem. Not by a long shot. Back home, I opened my laptop and checked the secure server. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. By morning, Richard Harrison would learn that sometimes the people you look down on have a much better view than you think. The next morning, I woke early and made Sophie's favorite breakfast, Belgian waffles with fresh berries. She deserved something special for what was about to happen. Okay, she said, sitting down at our kitchen island. Are you finally going to tell me what's going on? Mom called 3 times already, something about an emergency board meeting. I poured us both coffee and sat beside her. First, I need to show you something. I opened my laptop and pulled up a secure web page. This is Phoenix Digital's internal dashboard. The cybersecurity company? The one that's so secretive nobody knows who runs it. Her eyes widened as I logged in with full administrative access. Alex, what is this? I'm the founder and CEO of Phoenix Digital, I said quietly. Have been for 5 years. Those small startups I was supposedly working for? They were all shell companies, ways to stay anonymous while building something bigger. Sophie stared at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. But Phoenix Digital is worth just over $4 billion as of last quarter, I confirmed. That apartment we looked at last month? The one your mother said we could never afford? We could buy the entire building. She sat in stunned silence for a moment. Why didn't you tell me? Initially it was about security. The fewer people who knew, the safer our clients' data was. Then when I met you, I wanted to be sure you loved me for me, not my company. I took her hand. And lately? I've been waiting for the right moment to expose your family's technological vulnerabilities without compromising our government contracts. The security alerts last night, she said slowly. That was you. That was the automated government security audit system doing its job. Your father's company isn't nearly as secure as they think. But that's not the biggest problem they're about to face. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A message from my executive team. Phase 2 initiated. Board meeting notifications sent. Sophie, I said gently, in about an hour, your father's going to learn that someone has been quietly buying up shares of Harrison Technologies through various investment firms. As of this morning, that someone owns 51% of the company. Her eyes widened. You bought their company? Phoenix Digital did. Technically, we're now the parent company of Harrison Technologies. I squeezed her hand. I know this is a lot to take in. Before I could finish, her phone rang. The caller ID showed her father's name. You should answer it, I said. They'll be expecting us at the emergency board meeting. The next hour was a blur of activity. Sophie alternated between asking me detailed questions about Phoenix Digital and fielding increasingly panicked calls from her family. By the time we pulled up to Harrison Technologies headquarters, a media circus had already formed. How did they find out so fast? Sophie wondered. Phoenix Digital going public with our ownership was part of the plan, I explained. Your father's company has been cutting corners on security for years. This way, the takeover looks like a responsible industry leader stepping in to protect government interests. The boardroom was chaos when we arrived. Richard Harrison stood at the head of the table, his face purple with rage, while James paced behind him. Various board members huddled in corners, whispering urgently. You. Richard pointed at me as we entered. This is your fault somehow. Actually, sir, I said calmly, setting my laptop on the table. This is the result of your own decisions. Would you like to see the security audit results? Or should we start with the evidence of deliberately concealed system vulnerabilities? How dare you? James started forward but stopped as two people entered the room behind us. Mr. Chen, my chief operating officer Lisa Wong nodded professionally. The papers are ready. Thank you, Lisa, I replied, enjoying the shocked looks on everyone's faces. Everyone, please be seated. This emergency board meeting is now called to order. You can't call a board meeting. Richard exploded. You're nobody. Actually, Lisa interjected, as CEO of Phoenix Digital, which now holds majority ownership of Harrison Technologies, Mr. Chen has every right to call this meeting. The room fell silent. Margaret Harrison, who had just arrived, sank weakly into a chair. For those just joining us, I began, Phoenix Digital has acquired controlling interest in Harrison Technologies. This was not a hostile takeover. We simply purchased publicly available shares through various investment firms. Your recent government contract made the timing perfect. Phoenix Digital? James whispered. The Phoenix Digital? I nodded. The same company that declined this government contract last month, knowing your systems weren't up to standard. The same company that's been watching you cut corners on security protocols for years. And now the same company that's going to fix everything you've been doing wrong. Fix. Richard found his voice. Now see here. No, you see here, I cut in firmly. I have documentation of every shortcut, every vulnerability, every instance of negligence. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you step down gracefully, accept generous retirement packages, and let us protect your legacy by turning this company around. The hard way, well, the SEC is very interested in some of our findings. Sophie stepped forward. Dad, just listen to what Alex has to say. Please. The next 2 hours were a detailed presentation of everything we'd discovered, along with our plan to protect both the company and its employees. By the end, even Richard had fallen silent. Why? He finally asked. Why not just expose us? Because despite everything, you're Sophie's family, I replied. And because sometimes teaching a lesson is better than destroying someone. You've spent years looking down on people you thought were beneath you. How many talented employees have you lost because of that attitude? How many opportunities have you missed? The retirement packages are very generous, Lisa added, sliding folders across the table. And you'll maintain non-voting shares in the company. Your wealth is protected. All we want is control of operations. Slowly, one by one, they began to sign. James was the first, having finally realized the magnitude of their security failures. Margaret followed, her earlier condescension replaced by a shell-shocked silence. Richard was last, his hand trembling slightly as he signed away the company he'd built. I'll expect your offices cleared by the end of the week, I said, gathering the signed papers. Don't worry about the government contract. Phoenix Digital will handle everything. As we left the boardroom, Sophie took my hand. I can't believe you managed to keep this secret for so long. I wanted to tell you so many times, I admitted, especially during those family dinners. But I needed them to keep underestimating me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of changes. Harrison Technologies underwent a complete security overhaul, with Phoenix Digital's team implementing state-of-the-art protocols. Many of the overlooked employees were promoted to positions they deserved, their talents finally recognized. Richard and Margaret retreated to their vacation home in Palm Springs, the story of their retirement, carefully managed to protect their reputation. James actually approached me for a job at Phoenix Digital, showing surprising humility and a genuine desire to learn. You know what the craziest part is? Sophie said one evening as we sat in our new penthouse overlooking the city. They spent so much time worrying about status and appearance, they never noticed the real success right in front of them. I smiled, thinking about the coming years. Phoenix Digital was already planning expansions into artificial intelligence and quantum computing. The future was bright, and now I could finally share it all with the woman I loved. Your mother called today, I mentioned. She wanted to know if we'd come to dinner next week. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Really? What did you say? I said yes. But this time I'm not bringing pie. I grinned. I'm bringing our company's latest quarterly reports. She laughed, then grew serious. You know, you could have crushed them completely. Most people would have after the way they treated you. Success isn't about crushing others, I replied. It's about proving them wrong by being better than they ever imagined. Besides, I added with a smile, watching your father call me sir in board meetings is satisfaction enough. The story of the quiet programmer who secretly bought his in-laws' company became something of a legend in tech circles. Not because of the takeover itself, but because of how it was handled. No revenge, no public humiliation, just a professional transition that made both companies stronger. Richard sends me a Christmas card every year now, always with a note saying how the company's doing better than ever. I think he's finally learned that true success isn't about appearances or status. It's about integrity, innovation, and treating people with respect, regardless of their apparent position. As for me, I keep a photo on my desk from that last Thanksgiving dinner. It reminds me that sometimes the best response to being underestimated is to simply smile, be patient, and let success speak for itself. Lisa teases me about it sometimes. You could have ended them with one press release, she said recently. Instead, you gave them a golden parachute. I gave them something better, I replied. I gave them a lesson they'll never forget. And that's perhaps the greatest success of all.